The relationship is on the rocks, everyone can see it.
There's a massive trust deficit with the ANC. Everybody knows that. That's why their political fortunes are on the skids.
The marriage between the ANC and the DA is now officially over.
Each committee has 11 members. The ANC has 4. That's all I'll say.
Spread the fire. Welcome back to SMWX. I'm here outside Parliament where we've had a dramatic day. Budget, votes and fiscal frameworks passed by a razor-thin margin. And in this episode, I'm going to bring you a series of reactions from across the political spectrum. Before I do that, I just want to give you my own reaction because I think today was a very important day and we need to think about why it was important. The first reason it was important is that even though we had a change election last year, today was a signal that politics truly has shifted. To have such a razor-thin margin for the passing of a budget shows that despite the so-called GNU and its might in commanding a parliamentary majority, that doesn't necessarily translate into actual votes. And I have maintained and argued for a long time that in actual fact, we don't even have a GNU in South Africa. What we have is what I call a quantum coalition. You know how in quantum mechanics, something can be light and a particle, a wave and a particle at the same time, depending on whether or when you observe it. That's kind of this coalition. Sometimes it's a DA-ANC coalition. Other times it's an ANC Action SA smaller party coalition. Sometimes the EFF comes in to support the ANC. Sometimes the MK even. And so we have a GNU on paper, but really what we have is a shape-shifting coalition, depending on the issue and depending on who the ANC can find as a partner. And today we saw that in broad daylight, maybe for the first time really in Parliament. I mean, it was down to the wire, and I mean, in the long term, we can't have these votes on massive issues being these crunch votes all the time. So I think in the long term, the ANC is going to have to think to itself, you know, how does it stabilize its parliamentary majority? How does it make sure that whenever it needs to pass new legislation, or whether there's a motion of no confidence, or whether something on Phala Phala comes up, they can be certain of their majority? It's clear that the DA will be very wounded and very angry about what happened today. They nearly managed to embarrass their own government by creating a situation in which the fiscal framework would not be passed, but they just fell slightly short of that. And I suppose the question now is, what does the DA do? What I can do and what I try to do on this channel is just try to take you behind the scenes and tell you some of the things that I've seen. And what I can tell you is that DA people are not happy. They are really not happy. And I wouldn't be surprised, let me just say that, or it's going to take a lot of negotiating to try and keep them on side. Now, there are a number of things that the ANC could do. See, if they let go of the DA, there's still a problem, because even though they would have a majority if they brought a few smaller parties in, it would be a very thin majority. And you can't govern on 201 seats out of 400. You need that 210 margin. I mean, there's much more than 210 right now, and even that coalition can't govern. So who does the ANC bring in? And of course, there are a couple of options. I mean, obviously, the ANC would be thinking, can they get the EFF on side? Another thing that I've seen, though, is that smaller parties, your Action SAs, your Rise Mzansis, those who supported the budget today really do believe that they can convince the ANC out of the VAT proposal. Now, they've taken quite a significant gamble, because what the DA has said is that the ANC is going to play you like they've been playing us. They're going to tell you that they're going to lower this 0.5% VAT increase. They're going to get your votes, and then once they've got your votes, they're going to pull the rug from under you. And so there's a big and interesting gamble going on right now. Will the ANC actually bow to some of the recommendations that these smaller parties have issued, in which case those smaller parties would deserve a lot of credit because they will have made sure that the VAT increase actually is cancelled? Or has the ANC led them down the primrose path? What I will say is that the small parties, these parties that supported the budget today, are quite confident that they'll be able to talk sense into the ANC, as it were. And I did see, as I spoke to a number of ANC officials, I spoke to the Minister of Finance, you'll see that later, I think the ANC is open to talking because they know they need to get some support from somewhere on this. So I would stay tuned. just to conclude, this is not the end of the process. The fiscal framework is just the opening salvo after the budget is tabled. So we've had the tabling of the budget. Now we have the fiscal framework. After this, we have the division of revenue bill. After the division of revenue, we have the appropriations bill. So money still has to go to provinces. Then it still has to go to departments. And at each stage, we still need to get sign-off from the National Assembly. So what I suspect is going to happen in the next month or so is there are going to be furious debates, a possible reconsolidation of government, if not government, certainly a parliamentary reconsolidation, where the ANC will try to scramble for a more secure majority, because there's a lot to get done. And if every important thing is going to face these dramatic uncertainties, it's going to be very difficult for any government to actually govern. So just a preview of what you can expect. Minister of Finance, ANC Chief Whip Mdumiseni Ntuli. I spoke to a number of different people from different parties, from Action SA, from Rise Mzansi, from the ACDP to MK Party. So you're going to get a full spectrum of different views on what happened in Parliament today and the budget process. And you know, on this channel, you get more educated and enlightened about the country around you. And I can assure you, after watching these interviews, you'll know exactly what's going on the South African budget. Let's get into it. Aye. I'm here with Matthew Parks, Parliamentary Coordinator for COSATU. What's your reaction to all that we've seen today?
Look, it's messy, to put it politely. There are good things in the budget. The public service wage agreement to help nurses and doctors and teachers survive. Filling of critical frontline posts like 2,000 doctors, 4,000 police officers. Additional money to rebuild frontline services like health and education. A significant investment in infrastructure, about R1 trillion over the next 3 years, including 4 new hospitals in Limpopo and the Western Cape, investments in roads, water, ports, rail, electricity, which is going to help grow the economy. There's relief for the poor through a freeze on the fuel price, extending the goods exempt from VAT, double inflation increases for the social grants. So there's a lot of good things on the expenditure front. Where we differ is around the revenue side. We don't support it, not adjusting the personal income tax brackets for inflation. We don't support increasing VAT, albeit 0.5%, not 2% as originally proposed. So we were heartened by the Finance Committee yesterday agreeing that these must be reviewed, that Treasury must come back to the Finance Committee within 30 days with alternatives to the VAT hike, to not adjusting the PIT for inflation. It's very tight, to put it politely. We hope that the Treasury will indeed do that. We think it needs to be done within a week or 2 weeks, because it's very, very complicated now to amend something you just passed. It can be done. We hope it will be done. We think there are simple alternatives, like giving SARS space to go and raise the tax revenue. SARS already has raised an additional 9 billion rand, as reported yesterday. So that's already 2/3 of the VAT issue resolved. We think the Finance Committee should make sure that indeed Treasury does do that. We don't enforce a VAT hike on the 1st of May. It would have been better if they could have been amended yesterday, but let's give the benefit of the doubt to government, to Treasury to do so. But we hope they won't disappoint us, because the worst thing we could have done is to tell society, workers who are struggling with high levels of cost of living, who are highly indebted, that we're not going to do a VAT hike, and then in the 1st of May you do it. So we really hope they won't disappoint society, that they will prove that the doubt is wrong. There is space to do so, but they need to now show the political courage to do so.
Thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you.
I'm here with Mkhonto Sizwe MP Siyabonga Gama. We're talking about the budget. So how are you responding to what we've seen today in Parliament?
Today you've seen that the false promise of the GNU is beginning to unravel. You can see that the marriage between the ANC and the DA is now officially over. You can see that the ideologies, the clash of ideologies and the antagonism between the parties is beginning to show. So the DA, funny enough, voted for the poor, and the ANC voted for the establishment. So that in itself begins to say to us what happened to the ANC that we knew. The ANC that we knew is also no more. The ANC of the masses of our people is no more. So you'll see that the MK, the EFF, as the progressives, they came in and they said we continue to vote, to support our people. We are anti this VAT, because VAT is a regressive tax. it affects the poorest of the poor more than those who have. So this was a vote for us. It's a vote for the have-nots. It's a vote against the establishment. And also the process that led to this was also flawed, because what happened is that Action SA came in with something that introduces conditionalities. The Money Bills Amendment Act does not give you the possibility of coming up with a conditionality that says, no, let's deal with this thing after 30 days. So in fact, what should have happened is that they amend the bill or accept the bill. When the MK tried to put in some of our amendments, because we have views about how best to deal with these issues without actually having to raise VAT, but all of those things were actually rejected. So the ANC wants to continue with raising VAT, which affects the poorest of the poor more, even though they keep saying that no, they are going to revise the basket. But the fact of the matter is that the effect of VAT is regressive. So poor people, in terms of their share of savings, their share of income, it means now VAT is going to take a little bit more, and disposable incomes are very scarce in this kind of economy. And the MK party wanted to come with something that gives you a balance between austerity measures and economic growth. But also some of the assumptions that the ANC makes in the Standing Committee on Finance are actually ludicrous. They are saying that the GDP growth is going to be 1.9%. For the past 12 years, we've not experienced any growth of more than 1%. And they don't tell us what assumptions would take us to there. But we think, as the MK, that this country should grow at between 5 to 7% in order to deal with unemployment, to deal with inequality, to deal with poverty.
Right.
And we have, an arsenal of ideas in terms of how best to deal with some of these issues. This is the time and period of John Maynard Keynes. It's Keynesian economics that is going to take us out of this. We are not going to be taking the country forward by shrinking. So the ideas of Milton Keynes and trying to deal with, Milton Friedman are not going to assist us. So this is a John Maynard Keynes where we want state-led infrastructure growth that deals with social issues, but also the government has got the GEPF, which has got huge surpluses. You don't need to have such huge surpluses. What you can actually do, you can use some of that money into state-led social infrastructure investments. We build dams, railways, ports, and deal with some of the issues on the energy side. And in that space, create a lot of jobs in the country and stimulate consumption. Thank you.
Spread the fire. I'm here with Parliamentary Chief Whip of the ANC, Mdumiseni Ntuli, and thank you very much, sir, for joining us. What do you make of what happened today? The budget passed, but by a relatively slim margin. Are you happy or worried?
I'm happy. I think it's a step in the right direction. That we needed Parliament to adopt the fiscal framework, because without the fiscal framework, you are unable to lay the foundation towards the implementation of the budget on time to deal with a lot of pressing issues that continue to confront our people. So we are very happy, and we want to also convey our gratitude to other political parties, including the Action SA, within the GNU and outside the GNU, who took the initiative and who attach a serious value on the importance of engagement, discussions and persuasion, understanding that the country has never had a perfect budget. Even in 1994, up to date, the budget has never been perfect. It will always have some challenges. But the commitment to work together as different parties to respond to this imperfect budget in the context of our own national imperative, we think was a good statement, and it's very important.
Worried about the DA leaving the GNU, and also to what extent do you feel that you prevailed really strategically today?
Well, you see, it was important that we defeat that constant refrain on the part of the DA that the GNU doesn't exist without them. That in essence, they are the GNU. And right from the beginning, there was a concerted effort on their part to try to determine and dictate the national direction. What the GNU does, what it cannot do, what government does, what it cannot do. But I believe that recently, and with their own posture on international relations, it was perfectly clear that the relationship is going to be affected, and affected negatively. And I'm very happy that we succeeded to have the fiscal framework adopted by Parliament, despite the fact that the DA does not agree. Because that has communicated a clear message to the people of South Africa. That which we said in the beginning was the truth. That we are not about the DA, we are about the GNU, and we're pressing national issues that we're required to deal with. It can't be delayed by a party that is using VAT as a scapegoat, while essentially negotiating a reversal, a profound reversal of our own economic policies and the direction of our country.
One final question, the VAT increase. Seems to be a conditional thing with many parties saying they're hoping to convince you against this. Yeah. Do you think there's still space for conversation around how we raise this revenue?
Well, certainly this VAT is a hot potato. It's a hot potato, not just among the political parties, but even within the ANC. Sure. There is a discussion about how do we find a better way, different alternatives to respond to what the VAT is supposed to fund in this budget. So I'm very happy that the decision we've adopted today, including the recommendation of the Committee on Finance, is that we're going to use the period between now and the 1st of May together as parties who have agreed to adopt the fiscal framework to find and search for a solution that can help us to replace the VAT. And the ANC is genuine about that conversation. It's not, we're not raising that matter with the Action SA and other political parties in order to get their support to pass the fiscal framework. It's a commitment and an undertaking that we've made. And immediately, we will initiate meetings as the ANC, as we did towards this fiscal framework, with these political parties to start evaluating the options and be able to find some consensus to deal with what, as I said, is a hot potato.
So thank you so much for joining us. I'm here with none other than the Minister of Finance, Minister Enoch Godongwana. Minister, how do you feel about what happened today? In some ways, I suppose you've prevailed.
No, rationality prevailed, not me. If you look at these 194 members of parliament who voted in favor of this, they understand the need, South Africans, for us to be able to pass the budget and be able to ensure that the service delivery takes place.
You made a resounding statement today that those parties who don't support the budget cannot then implement it. Do you think that the relationship within the GNU may be on the rocks?
It's my view. I mean, the relationship is on the rocks. Everyone can see it. The DA has drawn the battle lines, and we've been keeping quiet. They have been kind of demolishing our brand, and they've been keeping quiet. Think that at some point there's going to be rationality in the discourse. In the absence of that rationality, I think some of us have thought that it's not unmandated positions, what I've said. But I think it's the general feeling of the members of the National Executive Committee that we've got to draw the line.
Lastly, so the VAT increase, of course, some of the parties who supported you today are asking for further discussions. Do you think there's a space for even further negotiation there?
Look, what is at issue? None of the parties that have asked for further negotiations are opposed to the spending side of the budget. Sure. Then what we need, the conversation we're going to have with them is, what is it if we drop the 0.5%? What is the revenue, another source of revenue which we'll utilize to close that gap? That's a rational debate which we need to have. I'm quite open to that.
Sir, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you.
Spread the Fire here with Scopa Chair and leader of Rise Mzansi, Mr. Songezo Zibi, friend of the show. How do you react to both the passing of the budget today, but also the manner and the tight shall we say, margins in the House.
I remember our conversation.
Absolutely.
When we said this is going to happen, all I'm going to say to South Africans, two things. One, this is the new normal. No party has a majority and has got the opportunity to get its way all the way through. Previously, the ANC would have never listened to parties like ourselves. Now they are forced to listen. And we've got the next 30 days to place our proposals on the table about how we can deal with the VAT and the personal income tax issue. So that is a first thing. The second thing that I want to say that it's really important that we look at budgets holistically all the time. Because the DA framed this entire thing as being about VAT, they sneaked in a measure that takes 19 billion rand away from artisans and plumbers and police officers and graduates in training and people who need that money to pay for school fees, for transport for their kids and that kind of thing. So the only thing I'm asking for, let's look at budgets holistically so that we don't get these things that get sneaked in while nobody is noticing.
And we've still got division of revenue and appropriations to go. Are you confident that you can convince the ANC away from these VAT proposals? We've spoken to a few ANC leaders today, and they looked a lot more amenable than I realized to these proposals.
Each committee has 11 members. The ANC has 4. That's all I'll say.
Great to speak to you again. I'm here with veteran politician Athol Trollip. He's someone who's played a central role in these questions around Parliament, and of course Action SA has been at the centre of the budget. What did you make of the budget passing and the role that Action SA has played in this important moment in our democracy?
Well, Sizwe, first of all, I want to just place it on the record that we were opposed to any VAT increases on the 19th of February, where we had our first aborted budget, and there was a mooted 2% increase. We were totally against that, and I said that we've got to cut the fat and leave VAT. That's our position still. We don't believe that poor South Africans must be filling the budget deficit or the budget gap. So when we watched this time lapse of 21 days before the minister came back again with a recrafted budget with an increase of 0.5%, immediately my ears went up and I said, that shows you that you can cut it. There's no need to have an increase. So we met with the minister and we got a concession from him to fund SARS by 4 billion rand plus 3 billion extra over the medium-term budget. And SARS was elated about that because we've been on about SARS. SARS collects the most revenue in this country. Today they reported that they collected 1.855 trillion rand, okay, which was 8.8 billion over their estimated target and 114 billion rand more than last year. So that's where the solution to this 28 billion rand shortfall is. It gives SARS the money to go and collect money that's not being paid, underdeclared, not declared, in the black market, in the illicit market, fill that gap. So we came to the committee to say, this vacillation and this impasse is hurting our economy. We've seen the value of the rand tumbling, and even today it was falling again. That's costing South Africans more. It's costing more jobs. It's creating uncertainty all over the world. People don't want to invest in South Africa. They regard us as a sort of government that's out of control. So we went to the Finance Committee yesterday and we said to them, look, we've got to pass this fiscal framework. All this vacillation's costing us. We moved 2 recommendations, not an amendment, because if we'd moved an amendment, the minister would have had to start from scratch and it was been another delay. And we said, cut that to naught. Increase and adjust private personal income tax according to inflation so that you don't earn more but take home less because of inflation. And that's what's been happening. There's been this kind of stealth tax bracket creep. And those recommendations were accepted in the committee. Look, the DA was furious with us because there were 11 people in the committee and we cast the casting vote. And furious, okay, and blamed us for everything, forgetting that their GNU partner, their big partner, had voted for it, and the IFP and ourselves. Now in Parliament today, any reporter's got to go to Parliament. Parliament voted 194 members of Parliament. So they agree with us. That puts pressure on the ANC to fulfill their undertakings to us, that they will go and find that revenue to fill that gap. Now, I'm going to hold Enoch Godongwana and the ANC to account to do that.
DA has said you're being led down the garden path by the ANC. You're saying you actually think there is space for that. Are you confident that the ANC won't disappoint your hopes that they will get serious about this VAT thing?
Sizwe, the ANC have got a really bad track record. There's a massive trust deficit with the ANC. Everybody knows that.
Yeah.
That's why their political fortunes are on the skids. I think they know that too. So we believe that they might start behaving better and fulfilling their commitments. I really do think that. So, it remains to be seen. But a lot of people are saying it's not going to work, it's not going to work, it's not going to work. It reminds me of Tshwane. When we went into government with Dr. Nasipi Moya and removed a government that thought they were so flash, she has shown them that it can work. So I'm not a prophet of doom. I really believe that South Africans are at their very best when they work together, and South Africans are at their very worst when they don't work together.
Minister Athol Trollip sometime soon?
No. You know what? I don't even know what I'm doing here. I'd retired from politics. Now I'm back in this melee. It's very difficult. Can I talk about that? Because last year we evaluated where we would make the most impact. Had a government of national unity with about 70% of the members of parliament, a massive government, and then you had this progressive bloc with the MKP and the EFF. I regarded more regressive than progressive, but we thought as the fulcrum in between those two big blocks, that's where we could play our best role. But if the DA leaves the GNU or they get kicked out of the GNU, then the DA goes back into the opposition. The DA is very good at opposition. I was in the DA for a long time, and they're very good at opposition. And then all of a sudden, the opposition space is crowded out. And we might be crowded out in that space. So we might have to reevaluate and say, where can we best fulfill our mandate? And our mandate is to fix South Africa. And, I've got an amazing team of MPs. I'm the only one who's a politician. The others are all professionals. Dr. Khosi Letlape is a medical doctor of high acclaim. Alan Beasley is a CA. He was on the finance committee with just the most amazing heart. So I think we can make a difference. And if we can make a difference to fix our country, that's where you'll find us.
Enkosi Ngokozatata. Here with ACDP MP Steve Swart. Sir, what did you make of both the budget, or at least the fiscal framework being passed, but also by a relatively slim margin?
Well, I think Parliament missed the opportunity yesterday in exercising its powers that we passed. I've been around a long time. We passed those powers that Parliament has got the ability to amend the fiscal framework and revenue proposals. And we know that South Africans are outraged by the VAT increase, the initial proposal of 2%, now even 0.5%. And we believe that should have been amended yesterday. What we are saying, when the question is, but where would the money come from? Well, it's very obvious. Give SARS additional resources to collect the 800 billion rand, or even a percentage of that. 10% of that would have been 80 billion rand. That would have been far more palatable. They already indicated yesterday they collected an extra 8.8 billion rand. That means only another 5 billion rand is needed to cover the 0.5% VAT increase, which would have been far more palatable to South Africans. So that is why we as the ACDP, we voted against the fiscal framework report today, and it was very close. But now the process is running. And if the suggestion now for 30 days the Treasury can come back, what if they don't? What if they don't come back? You've missed the opportunity as political parties. You've missed the opportunity to actually exercise your authority as a parliamentarian and say, this is what we're going to do, and we're going to do it. It's no good to say, oh, no, we don't support VAT, but we'll postpone it for 30 days, come back. No, the process is running. Divisional Revenue Bill, all these are now running quickly. And I think it's regrettable, and I think it's an opportunity that is missed by Parliament to exercise its authority given the new space that we've got, as opposed to previously where the ANC would just steamroll its budget through. Here, Parliament could really have exercised a very efficient oversight by amending certain aspects of the budget.
Can I ask you from a political perspective? You're someone who's been in the House and seen many administrations. What do you think is going on with this coalition government? And I mean, what are the political implications of what happened today from your perspective?
Well, I think it's quite severe, but one's got to understand that in any coalition government, there's going to be compromises, there's going to be discussions, there's going to be points of dispute. So one doesn't know where this is going to end up. I think there's a massive shift took place today. I don't know how it's going to, as you know, we're not part of the GNU. We don't desire to be part of that. So our vote was not based on whether we're going to be part of it or not. We took a principled stance against the VAT increase way back, and we stuck with that. But I do think that it is a very flexible situation at the moment. There's a lot of uncertainty as to who, because as the Minister of Finance indicated, if you vote against the budget, how can you be part of the GNU? So these are aspects, and that's not for him to decide, it's for the President to decide. But I think there is a lot of questions around, particularly if there's litigation about the process. Now, myself as a lawyer, I believe there are grounds, and I mentioned that in my speech. I think the process was not correctly followed. Now, we're not necessarily going to litigate on it. We don't have those resources. But it would be very sad if there's litigation that finds that the process of passing this initial budget was erred. There was an error with that, and that there then has to be a start again of the process. So it's very interesting times, but very challenging times. At least I think the Minister will sleep well tonight knowing that this first step, this first hurdle has been passed. But I think Parliament missed a wonderful opportunity to exercise a bit of flex its muscles and say to the executive, we don't accept that.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much.
Here with IFP leader Velenkosini Hlabisa. Minister Hlabisa, what did you make of today? Of course, you supported the budget, at least the fiscal framework, and it's gone through. What is your reaction to how things went in the House today?
Thank you very much. The IFP was part of these budget deliberations. We rejected the 2% VAT increase. We went back to Cabinet, and we gave a mandate to Treasury that they must look at various options, including going up to 0.5. So now, this budget contains many items which will compensate the 0.5 VAT increase. For instance, billions of rands were invested on infrastructure. This will create job opportunities. Billions of rands went to health, education, teachers, nurses, doctors will be employed. It is the poorest of the poor, black children, black community who go to public hospitals and clinics who will benefit out of this budget. The amount of zero-rated food items when it comes to VAT were increased. It's going to be a cushion. Again, the non-increase of fuel levy increase would have triggered the increase on transport as well as food prices. So now, the non-increase of fuel levy gives a cushion on those two items. We gave more money to SARS. SARS promised that if they can get more money, they will collect the billions amounting to 800 billion not collected. And once SARS have collected this money, because VAT increase is temporal, we stood against borrowing, because if you borrow, you will be putting a burden to generations, yet VAT is only temporal. And we made a commitment with the President that once we pass this stage, there must be a special cabinet meeting to discuss how are we going to grow the economy and how are we going to ensure that we revisit the expenditure in each and every department and make review where is necessary, but not cutting the expenditure on service delivery. Because a budget that does not deliver is as good as useless. It is better to have a budget that will deliver, create jobs, meet the basic needs of our people, but within a short space of time, the VAT will go away once the economy is growing.
Just lastly and politically, worried about the DA withdrawing, both nationally and in KZN, where you have quite a slim majority as part of the coalition?
At a national level, I was part of the intensive tour with the DA that you find a configuration at a provincial not the same as at a national. But let me start with this point.
Sure.
Our support of the budget, we are not supporting the ANC. We are following the logic of the IFP. We do not take a mandate from any other political party. So now, there is no political party that must say, because we do not support this, you must not support it. Even the ANC. We are going to differ sharply on other matters as we go forward. So now, as far as I'm concerned, this is at a national level, which is a split caused by VAT at a national level. It should not affect the provincial government. But if the DA feels so, you know as I know, there is no one political party that will determine how a government is formed in KwaZulu-Natal. It will be something open to discussion, which really will not be necessary. Just for your information, as you know, the Minister of Finance in KwaZulu-Natal is a DA member. He presented the budget. I'm sure he is looking forward to see the budget being executed. So now, if you say we are pulling out at a national level, how does the provinces come in? How do you affect the local government? Because those are other spheres of government in a coalition government. You will find a different configuration at a local government, different from the provincial government, and different from the national government. That is how coalition government works.
Minister Hlabisa, thanks so much for joining us again.
Thank you so much.
Fam, just want to give a shout out to two incredible partners who have helped make this podcast possible. First up, a massive thank you to Curiosity Cape Town for providing us with top-tier accommodation while we were in the city. They also gave us the stylish studio from which to shoot. Also, a massive thank you to Pace Car Rental for supporting us with transport during our time on the road, getting us to the key interviews and covering all the important events. So, if you're ever in Cape Town next time, check out Curiosity for your accommodation. And if you ever need a car rental company, you know, as an SMWX subscriber, you need to show love to Pace Car Rental. Aye.